Yeah. Ready?
Yep.
Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Clausen.
Here.
Commissioner Cox.
Here.
Commissioner Graven. Here. Commissioner Phipps.
Here.
Mayor Hall.
Here. Presentations, petitions, and communications. This portion of the city council meeting is reserved for persons who desire to address the council. The Open Meetings Act mandates that the council may not take action on comments received on matters that have not been identified on this agenda, but the council may direct staff to address the topic or refer the matter for action on the agenda for another meeting. Persons addressing the council are requested to limit their presentations to 3 minutes and to avoid repetitious comments. We would also ask you state your name and address for the record as well as stand when speaking. This is the public hearing on the proposed District I-57 Remington Drive Business District. So who goes first?
Did you want to open it for public comments?
Oh, yeah,
Other, before we get started?
Yeah. Anybody have any comments on this part of the meeting? This is not our regular meeting. This is the one on the business district. Anybody have any comments you'd like to make? Offhand. Yes.
Blake, 33 Fairway, Mattoon, Illinois. The business district was one of the tools that we outlined within the mechanisms for fund sports complex as we've had exhaustive public meetings over at this point. So naturally, I think that strong support of this attribute being approved. Even without the sports complex, I think this is a financial tool that needs to be utilized by the city. And so as we continue to figure out all the other necessary steps that we'll need to put in place for the sports complex, this is one that I think we need regardless. So I think we've done enough presentations as the pros and cons of that topic at our last meeting. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments?
Okay. Oh, time to open up the
You're gonna
public
open
hearing.
Public hearing?
Okay, so yeah, we're okay. We'll open the public hearing at this point.
Adam, you want to get up and talk about the business district plan?
Adam Stroud with PJV Planners out of St. Louis. Do you want my address or not?
No.
No, okay. I just appreciate the opportunity to work for the city of Mattoon. PJV and Mattoon have worked together for a number of years now. Not me personally, this is my first time, but some of my colleagues have. In fact, I was born here and my dad says hi, Mayor Hall. They worked together for many years at an accounting firm. So the business district, when we were asked to create it, basically our role in this is to ensure that the city is following the statute set by the state as to how you set up a business district, that you do the necessary meetings, such as this one, and that the necessary notices are put into the newspaper and that everybody knows what's going on. There are 2 deadlines for business districts in the state of Illinois, and that is October 1st and April 1st. And so we're hitting the April 1st deadline. So good on you for doing that. We send everything to the state, assuming that the ordinance is approved by the city council. And of course, that's up to you guys. But if it's approved, the tax would go into effect January 1 of 2023. And that revenue would begin to be generated at that point. This boundary was drawn in such a way that it includes most of what was referenced as the potential sports park, as well as some existing businesses and some opportunity sites along the interstate that can be used for development. The state doesn't just allow us to put business districts in place willy-nilly. You do have to back up your reasons, and that's one of the reasons why the city's involved, PGAV. So the primary reason here is not that the area is blighted because it's not nice, right? The blighted definition is very specific in the statute. It doesn't mean your community's not nice or the businesses aren't nice or anything like that. We utilized 2 main portions of the statute. On the one hand, if you do not have adequate streets to develop an area, then it is seen as blighted. And then a secondary factor we used was some site deterioration on some of the aging parking lots and properties within the area. You can't use vacancy as a factor for the business district, but there were a couple of vacant hotels that have actually hopefully will open up in the coming years. So the lack of streets was the primary factor we used, and we believe that this area represents enough to consider it a blighted area so that you can use this tool to develop the area. The budget, I want to make a note of that. The budget in this case is on page. It's in here.
18.
18. Thanks, Kyle. Budget's on page 18. The important thing to note here is that if you want to ever come back and amend this business district, whether it be you amend the budget or you amend the boundary, you have to come back and you have to have an additional public hearing as well as noticing in the newspaper anytime you change the boundaries. You can change the budget with inflation, but as soon as you go beyond that, that total dollar amount, that 66 million, that's where you got to come back and you got to have another public hearing and let everybody know what you're doing. The basis for this budget was based on the plans that we saw for additional retail and accommodation development out there, really in relation with the sports complex, but also just the fact that it's near the interstate, hoping that more additional retail and accommodations will come out that way, and dining, obviously, also. So this is all the revenue that can be generated over those 23 years, which is the typical life of the business district in Illinois. That's the basis for these items. Now, the individual line items, that's based on what we've heard, some of the preliminary costs categories for how the development will occur. The land is already owned by Rural King. A lot of the land is, so we don't foresee any of the money being used for land acquisition. So that's why you see that zeroed out. That's that property assembly category. One thing to note is that the most important part of the budget is that bottom line, that total dollar amount. The money can be moved freely within those line items without any additional public hearing or any additional amendments to the plan. So the bottom line is the most important part. I'll take any questions, and again, just appreciate the opportunity to work for the city.
I will just clarify one thing. You said we met the April 1st deadline. You meant to probably said the October 1st.
October 1st. We meant the
deadline.
April 1st one too, but
Yeah.
October 1st is what I meant. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, Kyle.
No problem.
Any questions?
And
Points of
can
clarity?
I, next question, you said that the 66 million, that could be just for the pension or not? So, or if that were public hearing.
Yeah, great question. You can adjust it 5% after adjusting for inflation. So if you adjust it for inflation, number one, and then you can go up 5% beyond whatever that number is. And when we do these calculations, it's typically just the consumer price index for all urban consumers, which is a pretty standard measure used in the country.
So is it the business district, Adam, 23 years, or I thought it was 30 years?
It's 23 years.
3 years.
I
And
thought the project was 30 years.
It is.
Property
But
tax.
then we
Bonds
have,
are.
oh, just the bonds only. Okay.
right, and the obligations that are subject or reliant on the business district funds can go on for 20. So this financial package that will be structured in such a way that the one that has to do with business district revenue is 20 years, and then the other revenues have their own lifespans and timelines and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions for anybody? From anybody? Okay, so,
Thank you.
We just closed it.
thank you. Okay, so then we'll close this hearing now and then ask for a motion to adjourn.
You want to
Yes,
make sure that there's nobody online that wants to talk?
yes, thank you. Would anybody that's online like to ask any questions or make any statements? We got John.
Who's John? Yep, there he is. Anyone?
Okay. I don't hear anybody, so, all right, so then we need a motion to adjourn.
No, did you close the hearing then?
Oh, I thought,
Okay.
I didn't.
so no.
I'll close it.
Okay.
Close the hearing then. And now, a motion to adjourn.
Mayor, I'd make a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Cox, second.
I'll second it.
David, and roll call then.
Commissioner Clausen,
Yes.
Commissioner Cox,
Yes.
Commissioner Graven,
Yes.
Commissioner Phipps,
Yes.
Mayor Hall.
Yes.
Concludes the special meeting, and I will be pausing the recorder until we get ready to start up the regular council meeting at 6:30.
Regular council meeting up, 20 minutes before we start the regular council meeting.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
We need. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Clausen,
Here.
Commissioner Cox,
Here.
Commissioner Graven. Here. Commissioner Phipps,
Here.
Mayor Hall.
Here. Consent agenda. Items listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature and will be enacted by one motion. No separate discussion of these items will occur unless a council member requests the item to be removed from the consent agenda. If an item is removed from the consent agenda, it will be considered elsewhere on the agenda for this meeting. Prior to asking for a motion to approve the consent agenda, the mayor will ask if anyone desires to remove an item from the consent agenda for public discussion. Would anybody like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of August the 16th, 2022. The bills and payroll for the last half of August 2022 and resolution number 2022-3205 approving the continuance of a local state of emergency due to coronavirus COVID-19. Can I have a second on that motion?
Second.
Commissioner Cox? And roll call.
Commissioner Clausen.
Yes.
Commissioner Cox,
Yes.
Commissioner Graven,
Yes.
Commissioner Phipps,
Yes.
Mayor Hall.
Yes. Presentations, petitions, and communications. This portion of the city council meeting is reserved for persons who desire to address the council. The Illinois Open Meetings Act mandates that the city council may not take action on comments received on matters that have not been identified on this agenda, but the council may direct staff to address the topic or refer the matter for action on an agenda for another meeting. Persons addressing the council are requested to limit their presentations to 3 minutes and to avoid repetitious comments. We would also ask that you state your name and address for the record, as well as stand when speaking. Before anybody gets up on the agenda items, I have comments, an online comments I'd like to read to everybody. It comes from an individual by the name of Glenn Carter. And he would ask that we submit this statement to the council at tonight's meeting. On new subjects, the railroad crossing on Lakeland Boulevard is very rough. It has needed attention for a very long time. My question is, what can the city do to upgrade or eliminate this crossing? I have not seen a train on it, and I am unsure if it's still a valid rail crossing. On this particular item, we can't really take any action on this. We'll turn it over to whoever that's responsible for this. I always like to give things to Dean in this nature. But anyway, so that's the first one. But the other one, he identifies this as the West Side Drainage Project Statement to Council. The ditch on the north side of my property at 14 Western Avenue Heights had silted in. The water would not drain properly and would sit in my ditch. Earlier this year, I dug the ditch north of the field entrance and it drains for now. But the ditch north needs more than me with a shovel. The ditch along 43rd Street has needed maintenance for a long time. Now, this is the property, of course, north of 43rd from Middle School. So I can give copies of this to Dean also. Again, he wanted these comments to read, but now we'll take comments from the audience about any item on the agenda. And again, you should come up to the front, state your name and where you're from. We do have people online and we'll give them a chance to speak also. So who would like to start? Don't be shy. I know people have something to say.
I am Henry Unkraut, 3709 Marshall, Mattoon. I'm talking about motion 12, which is about the drainage. I intend to come back later if it works out on motion 12 when it gets to that point. What we're looking for is that people in Mattoon know what is going on to about 1/3 to 1/2 of the city. From the railroad on Western Avenue West, there never was any storm drains, and there isn't. Now, you may look like in Lane Acre South there is. They go to a retention pond. They don't go directly to any kind of system. That retention pond then drains into the fields, and so what we've really got is not an underground problem. We got a surface water problem. It's not been bad this year because we've been dry. So all we're trying to do at this point is call attention. I realize that phase 1 is not going to happen as phase 1 was talked about. At this time, I'm looking at something like 0.4 or 0.5 phase, I guess. You'd like to see the field behind us drained, which will go through the land that the bank owns, I guess, or we could say, or at least controls. I've been down that road before with them. If that was drained, then the whole system at least would work better. Thank you.
Okay. Who would like to be next? Any item at this point? Okay.
So,
Name.
my first name is Jason. My last name is Inyard. I live in the 3000 block of Prairie. Before I speak about my concern, I would first of all like to thank you all for your service to our community. You all hold jobs that are very thankless and do not get the recognition that they deserve in the community. My wife and I, over the past 4 years, have spent just shy of $3,000 in our basement because of water that's coming up from our drains. We have no control over it, and I've asked a plumber, and he said I can't cap it because it could cause pressure and cause cracks in my concrete. We have recently put industrial shelving in the basement. We have mop buckets, squeegees, and everything. And when we have these storms, like I just go down there and watch it just comes up the drain, and I just have to sit and watch. And I would just like to ask on behalf of myself and my family that we do expedite something to get this recognized, because we enjoy spending our money on more enjoyable things than putting up our basement.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you got somebody that's heading that way.
My name is Deanna Wishu, live at 127 Westview. Due to the field behind 127 Westview, well, like what he said, when the field is dry, it's okay. We haven't had a lot of rain this year, but when the field is, or the ground is wet, the water table is high, our subdivision floods. So it floods to the point where I can't get my car out because I drive a low vehicle to get to work. So luckily, my sister works in town. Someone can get her to the hospital. She's in healthcare. I work in Champaign, so I lose wages when our subdivision floods because I can't get my vehicle out to get to work. So this is something I would like to get, resolved so that I know I can get myself to work.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Renee Fuller. I live at 229 Circle Drive, which is in Westview subdivision. And it's, as Henry said, been dry this year. There's water in the street and has been the entire summer because it's draining from the field into the street. And I'm currently having water there. And I know the last time I spoke, I was told to clean out the intakes in the drains. We don't have any. We don't have any drains. And it just comes puddling in. You had said the fire trucks can get through, but at 11 and 12 inches of water, like he said, are you going to come and take them to work? No. People are losing. Mr. Moore has had water up into his home because of the water. I asked him, I said, you have a sump pump on your house? He goes, yeah, but it doesn't do any good when it's in my house and no place for it to go. Someone else says when it rains like that, the sewer and sewage comes up in their bathtub and their toilet. So this isn't just a street issue, it's coming into a health issue. And again, it's runoff from the field that needs to be corrected and taken away from the homes. So it's getting to the point that people aren't staying, they can't get out and their property's destroying it from all the water.
Thank you very much. Anybody else like to speak about any subject on the agenda tonight? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. My name is Melissa McDaniel. I live at 3016 Oak Avenue. I'm actually here to speak about point number 11. I'm here representing the Mattoon in Motion Housing Committee. I'm the chair of that committee, and we've been talking about housing for the past 5 years. We've been working on housing for the past 5 years. There's not enough money that could be invested in housing. The needs are greater than there is funding for, right? We all know that. But we've been talking about a new subdivision, and that really being the goal for the next 5 years. There's rehab needs, there's huge needs in Mattoon. We're looking at other things too, but specifically, we want to attract new families. We want to help families stay in Mattoon that want to stay, but maybe don't have the proper housing. And so we're undertaking a housing study right now. And our top goal is to work directly with the city. The city partners with us. They serve on the housing committee. And so we're coming here tonight asking for the council's support for motion 11 to allocate and appropriate $500,000 to help support the infrastructure of a new subdivision in Mattoon. There are 6 different sites that we're looking at, 2 of which the city owns. And the housing committee will be coming back with recommendations to the city council on what is going to be the most viable option and what's going to have the best return on investment for the city with these funds.
Okay. You have a full-time job that builds new housing.
Yes, I am also the executive director for Coles County Habitat for Humanity, for those of you who don't know me.
And you build new houses every year,
Absolutely.
but you can't get there at the rate you're going.
We can't. And our homes are affordable homes. We build modest 1,200 square foot, 3-bedroom homes, typically a little bit more, about 1,400 square feet for a 4-bedroom, about 1,000 square feet for a 2-bedroom. So they're small. They don't have necessarily they don't meet all of the needs that Mattoon has, right? And it is one home at a time at this point in time. And so there is a greater need, and we see that need. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm passionate about housing. It's one of the reasons why I chair the housing committee. We see affordable housing as a part of that, but it is not the only piece of what needs to happen with housing in Mattoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments? We're gonna of course get into some discussion later among ourselves. We may get into some other discussion from the audience, but does anybody have any comments they want to make before we get into the motions? Would anybody online like to make any comments to the audience here today about any of the subjects on the agenda? Okay, I don't hear anybody, so we're going to move into new business. And the first ordinance, or the first motion is mine, and I move to adopt ordinance number 2022-5456, approving the amendments to the Municipal Code 90 to establish a regulation allowing residents to raise chickens for non-commercial use. Can I have a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. Commissioner Phipps, and then second to that. Oh, we just did a second.
Yeah, in the second.
Second motion. Any comments anybody has about this particular motion?
I do have, go ahead. Go ahead.
So this is basically the same set of rules that you've seen in our previous discussion. I did modify the wording to address anything I was capable of addressing in the ordinance, to satisfy, some of the concerns that were expressed. Everything except for, right. Get that far, I do have one modification that I'd like to make on page 3. It's near the end of section 90, pack 23.3. The second to last full paragraph says the minimum size for the chicken run shall be 10 square feet. I would like to change that to 7.5 square feet with a minimum ceiling height of 3 feet. I'd like to change that to 2 feet.
You got that.
Yep.
The purpose of that change is to fit with, Merck King has brought out some new units on their lot, and I want to adjust our rules so that they fit with some of the options.
Any other comments, Dean? Any questions for Dean offhand? Okay, any other?
I do have some questions. This is addressed to Dan on how does this affect homeowners association and covenants with respect to disallowing it?
Disallowing.
Or if this ordinance is approved, how this affects the homeowners association and or subdivisions that have covenants
Well,
that prohibit?
it doesn't do, the ordinance would apply citywide. It would permit chickens under these circumstances, but if someone's in a homeowners association or some other sort of group that has specifically said that you're not allowed to have chickens in this neighborhood, that would still control. Now, that doesn't mean that the city will patrol that. That doesn't mean the city will enforce your covenants in your homeowners association. What it means is if someone violates their homeowners association rules, somebody else that's in the homeowners association can bring a civil suit in court and seek an injunction from the court to have that stopped. And if it's a valid restrictive covenant of some kind, a judge will probably issue an injunction, but that's the action it takes. It would be a civil action in court. It wouldn't be anything that prevents someone from putting one up, and someone would then have to take some sort of action, get an injunction to make it stop. So it would not override homeowners association agreements and restrictive covenants that are already in place.
So basically, the police department or any kind of enforcement would be non-existent. It would be the homeowner, myself, having to spend my money to either put up a privacy fence or take them to court, right?
That's correct, depending on what your homeowners association agreement says. And when we talk about the penalties section, it really doesn't talk about enforcement. It doesn't say who's going to be enforcing it. Is it the police department? Is there going to be an animal control officer? It doesn't mention that, and it's sort of lacking in that department. It also doesn't mention any fines, which we see for most ordinance violations. It talks about permit and loss of permit rights, but it doesn't talk about a fine for violating the city ordinance, which might want to be put in there. Council, of course, but the enforcement provisions are there about the permits, but there's nothing in there about maintaining a nuisance and fines, which we see in most of our city ordinances.
So basically, there's no teeth in this ordinance to protect the neighbor who doesn't want the chickens or who doesn't have chickens, correct?
Well, they would be able to report to somebody if there's a violation of the terms, and then there could be whoever is the enforcement officer can assess a fine, or not a fine, but can assess some sort of penalty against the permit. But that's all that's in there, right? There's no fines, there's nothing else, right?
So the police department currently is overtaxed right now, answering calls of 1,500 to plus calls per 2-week period, roughly 2-week period. We struggle, the city of Mattoon struggles with enforcing our current ordinance with respect to property maintenance. Again, the house over here on Richmond is getting knee deep again, which I believe the city probably leaned and cleaned it. We have several properties that we've been in court numerous times because we have
a city court that we don't get a whole lot of cooperation from the judge. We're going to have more nuisance with neighbors that have chickens, that dogs barking, which that's a violation. We can get fined for that, correct?
Yes.
If we don't curtail our dogs. I foresee we've had coyote problems on the south side of Mattoon, down by the school. My mom used to live down there. Numerous times the paper put coyote issues. Foxes, I've had foxes in my fenced-in backyard over the years I've lived there. Raccoons and stuff. So people's small dogs, you're not going to be able to let them out your back door and let them enjoy their backyard, which you've been accustomed to having them do that. Property values will decrease as a result of this because I've had people in my neighborhood who have been unable to sell their house because the people next door don't mow their yard. And you don't want to live next door to houses that don't take care of their property. Some comments was made at Public Works Advisory Board meeting one time when you first brought this up. People with allergies and breathing difficulties, this adds more to that. You talk about they can dump their waste and stuff at the yard waste facility. How much extra work is that going to be there? Which we don't have the manpower to take care of it as we stand right now. I just think that I mentioned at one of the meetings that potentially put this on a special use permit type deal. That way the neighbors have the ability to say yes or no. Right now, you're taking people that have spent a lifetime in improving, as this gentleman said, he would rather spend his money on something other than fixing his water problem. I'd rather spend my money on something rather than a privacy fence or civil lawsuits to curtail that.
Any other comments, Sandy? Any questions for Sandy?
This has been one of the harder ones for me in some time to come to a conclusion because I do see both sides and I see the benefit and the pros of the practice of sustainability. So I do recognize that. I do appreciate it. I've always looked at decisions that I have to make when I vote on something is what is good for the most people that we serve in the city of Mattoon and how does that affect their daily lives. Because we can make decisions that have minimal impact in the short term, but they have major consequences in long term. And so I always kind of try to look at things through that lens. And I agree with a lot of your points that you made, Commissioner Graven. One of the things that really comes to mind is just putting another layer of enforcement on the police department with another nuisance ordinance. And inside the city limits, there are backyards that are basically, they butt up to one another and they could be very small yards. And I just see this as potential problems between neighbors, problems with other wildlife coming in that Commissioner Graven mentioned, let alone the fact of one neighbor has a dog or cats or what have you, the other one has a chicken coop there. I just don't see it being compatible with in-city residential living. I think there's things that are just suitable for living in the country, and there's things that are suitable for living in town. So, for a variety of reasons, not to rehash some of the things that Commissioner Graven said, but for that reason, and I do appreciate the thought and the passion that people have for bringing this forward. But because of the comments that have been made so far, I will be voting no.
Any other comments anybody has?
My comments are, as you read this ordinance, we do have under section 90.30, people still have to get a permit to be able to do this. And then if you go to 90.36, there are penalties. So I don't know what's worse. If we don't approve this ordinance, does that just allow more people? Because I think there are some that are raising chickens right now. I don't know the numbers. But at least this does give us a little way to get people, get the permit, pay the $25 annual fee, and then there are some penalties. Granted, we have to figure out how those penalties are enforced. I agree with both commissioners. I don't want to put more on the police department, but I think this ordinance does give our city a little leverage in how to regulate.
What penalties are you seeing, Commissioner Clausen?
It's listed under 90.36. I mean, the ordinance, right?
So what I wrote, correct, incorrect, is that violations would be considered a public and was assuming that that would tie with the city code. We need to add a penalty.
That makes sense, Dan. I have to look at a legal opinion. We got one person that says we're okay. We got another one that said maybe
Well,
not.
You know, for example, if you look at 9036, I think it should be punched up. The next to last paragraph, if a person is found to be in violation of these regulations, and it doesn't, if a person is found by whom? Is it a judge? Is it some sort of animal control officer? Is it police chief? I mean, who's making these decisions? And then what is the penalty? Is it, are we tapping into the nuisance ordinance? Or is it our general penalty provision? There's a general penalty provision that could be adopted. I think from an enforcement standpoint, this part could be punched up.
I'll be happy to accept those comments. Hopefully.
I like it. I like the idea. I mean, it's progressive, you know, there's a reason why Muhammad does it, Champaign does it, Mount Zion does it. You know, are there issues? Possibly. But I got a feeling they're going to be a lot smaller than possibly what we're thinking, or at least, but I appreciate the comments, but I don't see an issue with it.
So you want them next door to you? You're okay with that?
If they want them there, that's fine. That's fine.
Yep.
I'll get some eggs out of it.
Anybody, you what now?
I'll get some eggs out of it.
Get some eggs?
Eggs out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. We've heard from several groups on this issue before in our council meetings, and we've had people come in and talk about primarily the pros because they're the ones that want the chicken ordinance. I think all of us have received maybe positive and negative comments. Personally, I've received more negative comments than positive. They're well thought out. They're long documents oftentimes, but you know, they make several points. This is one of those things where, you know, no matter how the vote goes, you can't win. Somebody's going to be upset if we have them. Some people are going to be upset if you don't have them. And yes, Dave. Yes.
Burford.
And I think you'll be more neighbor on neighbor arguments. And no offense, but the way society is today, people take things into their own hands, especially if police don't arrive timely, as fire department could attest to, should be able to attest to on a call the other night, when they don't get service as quickly as what they seem. But I would not even remotely think about this ordinance without the added issues. But I think if it's even going to entertain an idea, it should be on a special use permit basis to where neighbors have the right to say yes or no. because you're forcing something on every person, property owner in this town without their input and their ability to speak yes or no.
Okay. Anybody else have any more comments? We're ready for a vote?
Yeah.
Should be yes.
Just real quick.
Can we have your name, please, and where you're from? Could you come up just because we got people that won't be able to hear you?
Hi, Joseph Herbert, 1101 Bell Avenue.
That was, last name was?
Herbert.
Okay.
And in terms of an HOA, anybody could do anything that's legal, that's against your HOA rules. And you'd have to seek that sort of recourse. So anything could happen in those terms where you would have to do that. The police would never come and enforce anything that was not against the law. Is that correct? If someone were to, outside of chickens, if there was something legal that could be done in an like in town, but not in an HOA, and they were breaking it, you wouldn't come in and enforce that.
No.
So, I mean, that still stands. You had said in a previous one, I believe, that you have no concern over the enforcement of this. Like you said, you see little concern with the enforcement of this.
Now, I don't remember saying that. What I would say is, if people have waited this long for there to be an ordinance allowing them to have the chickens, they're going to do it right. Otherwise, if they wanted to break the law, break city code, they would have already done it and just got chickens. And some have.
There are, yeah.
So the ones that are going to come as a result of this being passed, they're going to do it right. That's not my concern. My concern is the neighbors that don't want them.
Sure.
There's going to be more, and I don't know how many people are going to take advantage of this. It might be a handful.
Right.
But there's potential there for neighborhood disputes. And one way to alleviate that is, well, your idea. I don't know much about the special use permit, but getting the neighbors on board then.
Okay.
So that's what I would foresee if there's any problems. It wouldn't be violating that ordinance. People are going to do it right. They've waited this long to do it. It would be, if there's an issue, it would be neighborhood disputes.
Do we currently have any situations where nuisance orders are taking priority over serious crimes or anything like that?
No.
Okay. And then in terms of the close property thing, I believe Dean has written in there that it has to be a certain distance from property lines. So the people that have those close adjoining properties wouldn't be able to get to partake in this. We've also addressed the concerns about landlords and everything like that was brought up at the previous meeting. And I just want to make sure that the full, like, true scope of this is being looked at, and not just some people are concerned and they're being more vocal about it in your communities. So I just wanted to let that be heard. Thank you. So.
Okay, thank you. Are you done? Yeah.
I got a quick question. Dean, wasn't this taken from Mahomet and Champaign, a combination of their zoning,
It was.
and then adjusted?
It was first of it as far as I know.
Yep.
And then Champaign copied off their ordinance on it. Maintenance ordinance.
And then adjusted for the comments at the last council meeting that we discussed it. Thank you.
Okay. We're ready for roll call then.
Are you going to change are you going to make,
Any amendments?
the amendment to it? Or are you
We've
just
got a lot of, if we make all the amendments, my guess, we're gonna have to postpone this. Because I don't know that we're gonna be able to write all the amendments. For example, Sandy's, one of them was to get approval of your neighbors around you.
On the special permit. The only amendment that I would ask would be $2.
Okay. Yeah, so,
And.
So before I take a roll call, we would need somebody to make those amendments tonight.
Last, of course, we want to postpone the vote, so that I can change. I can add any comments. When I add comments from Dan, it's not going to change whether.
all right.
And so, to the extent that we want to move forward, we can certainly delay one meeting, get those comments. If the council wishes a special use, then yes, we do.
So we're better off if we don't vote on it at all. And if we're gonna do more changes, we don't know what they are. I don't think if it passes, first of all, if it fails, it may fail because we haven't made these adjustments. If it passes, we may have a resolution that nobody really likes. So I'm thinking that maybe right now, I mean, I hate to do this, but maybe right now we just say we postpone it. What is the council?
When you have a motion to
We have to.
accept it as is right now,
Right.
in a second.
So we'd have to.
Withdraw your motion, right?
Right. Right.
You could either amend it and
I can
postpone it, or
withdraw it.
I think some,
Table again?
Wait a second.
A motion for table?
you motion to postpone it, yeah, table it.
table it.
I'd rather table it.
Okay. So I need to make that motion then?
Somebody.
I made the original motion. I'll go ahead and make the motion to table it for further changes, and we'll schedule it again and see how this is going to be the best. If it's going to pass, this is going to be the best chance for it to pass.
I need a second.
I'll
And
second.
a second,
Second.
Commissioner Clausen. Now we can do it.
So the vote to
Table.
table it. Commissioner Cox.
This is a motion to table.
Right.
Motion to table.
Yes.
Commissioner Graven.
Yes.
Commissioner Phipps.
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen.
Yes.
Mayor Hall.
Yes. Okay. Next item, me also. I move to adopt special resolution number 2022-1824, authorizing a special use of 1500 Richmond Avenue to allow construction and operation of an unmanned telecommunication equipment shelter. Timothy R. Cofield, petitioner. Can I have a second to that?
Second.
Mr. Cox? And any discussion on this? Anybody want to explain what's going on here?
Went to the planning commission. There's one at 2 houses to the west, or 2 lots to the west. There is a shelter very similar to this. These are, there's a major fiber optic line that runs down 15th Street. So this is just basically a shelter where other people can tie into that fiber optic and give services to people all over. It's a concrete structure. It'll meet all the setbacks. There will be a fence around it, chain link fence around it with the top foot barbed wire. Again, there's one just 2 lots to the west that's going to look very similar, and it is zone C4 or C3 for it. So, but we do require it to have a special use. So they've came through the planning commission and it was recommended that the special use be allowed. So.
Any other questions, comments? Roll call.
Commissioner Graven.
Yes.
Commissioner Phipps.
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen.
Yes.
Commissioner Cox.
Yes.
Mayor Hall.
Yes.
Motion to adopt resolution number 2022-3206, approving the ITIP, Illinois Transportation Enhancement Program, grant application for connection of the existing bike trail to the hotel complex, authorizing $30,000 in matching funds from the capital projects and/or MFT funds, and authorizing the mayor to sign the application.
Can we have a second on this motion?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Phipps, and any comments anybody has on this?
I'll just say that this particular project connecting the hotel complex near the east end of Broadway Avenue to the bike trail was identified in the comprehensive plan work that was done in 2013, 2014. Was identified again in the bikeway plan, and it was developed. The ITEP grant is open right now. Whitney and I are working on the grant application. The total cost would be $150,000, of which $100,000 would be covered.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Phipps.
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen.
Yes.
Commissioner Cox.
Yes.
Commissioner Graven.
Yes.
Mayor Hall.
Yes. Item number 4, this motion, Commissioner Graven would like to remove this motion from the agenda. So we're moving to motion, I move to adopt resolution number 2022-3208, accepting the termination of animal control services to the city of Mattoon and accepting a new agreement with Coles County for animal control, and also authorize the mayor to sign the agreement. Can I have a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Commissioner Graven, and any discussion on this one? We had a change. All I know.
Yeah, the population, declined at the last census, so their amount of fees, they got less money, so they've made I called them and explained to them that it was going to be dropped, and they took it back, and they've asked, their county board to recommend some higher fees per population, so that way they kind of keep it close to the same amount of money. It will be just a tad bit more than what they have, but it's been the same for the last 10 years since the last census.
So fees go up a little bit, but very little, and we definitely need the service.
Correct.
So, okay. Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Cox.
Yes.
Commissioner Graven.
Yes.
Commissioner Phipps.
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen.
Yes.
Mayor Hall.
Yes.
Motion to approve council decision request 2022-2290, approving the cost proposal in the amount of $49,000 and $49,040 from Clark Dietz for improvements to the primary digester of the wastewater treatment plant, and authorizing the mayor to sign the professional services agreement.
And a second on that motion?
Second.
Commissioner Cox, and any comments on this one? None? Okay, let's do, anybody got any questions offhand? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Graven.
Yes.
Commissioner Phipps.
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen.
Yes.
Commissioner Cox.
Yes.
Mayor Hall.
Yes.
I make a motion to approve council decision request 2022-2291, approving a $4,700 grant by the Tourism Advisory Committee from FY22-23 Hotel Motel Tax Funds to the Mattoon High School in support of the Craig Dixon Golf Invite event, which is $3,200 to be held on September 9th and 10th, 2022, and the Girls Holiday Tournament in the amount of $1,500 to be held on December 27th through the 29th, 2022, and authorizing the mayor to sign the agreement.
And a second for that one.
Second.
Commissioner Clausen, and any comments on that one? Anything? Anybody? No? Okay, roll call.
Commissioner Phipps.
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen.
Yes.
Commissioner Cox.
Yes.
Commissioner Graven.
Yes.
Mayor Hall.
Yes. I move to approve council decision request 2022-2292, authorizing the purchase of 8 in-car video systems, microphone packages, 39 body-worn cameras packages, and software with setup from Safe Fleet in the amount of $73,245 for the Mattoon Police Department, to be paid from seizure funds, and authorizing the police chief to sign the quote. Yes. Okay, so second on that motion.
I'll second.
Commissioner Graven, and any comments over here, Commissioner, or not Commissioner, but Chief?
Just
Gaines.
our body cameras, when I first wrote the grant, the body cameras we have now are from 2018. Unfortunately, technology doesn't last that long. They're falling off, and we haven't been able to replace them because the cameras we got now, they stopped making. It's the same company. It's the only company we can use. That's why you don't see any quotes. Our back end that stores all the video is Safe Fleet. We have to use Safe Fleet cameras. It will come out of seizure funds. Here within the coming weeks, the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board will be opening their grant for body cameras, which will write that and hope to get approved for that grant and get the majority of that money back. They don't pay for licensing. and things of that nature, but we'll get a lot of that money back.
So explain what seizure funds are to people.
It's property money seized that has been used or seized during the commission of a crime. Most of it is drug money, drug vehicles that are seized during the commission of a crime. The state will auction off those vehicles and sell them, and then we get the funds.
Portion of it, yeah. Okay, all right, thank you.
And Sam, does this also keep us in compliance with that Safety Act that was adopted in 2021?
It does, and I think they did give quite a bit of time for that. I don't know that if I didn't get these right now, I don't think we would be in, non-compliant. I think they gave agencies several years to get that up and going, but we had them anyway. We were already there. It's just a matter of it's time to replace them. Sure.
Okay, any other questions? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Clausen.
Yes.
Commissioner Cox.
Yes.
Commissioner Graven.
Yes.
Commissioner Phipps.
Yes.
Mayor Hall.
Yes.
I make a motion to approve council decision request 2022-2293, approving the reappointments of Chris Considine, Blake Fairchild, Rich Finelli, Justin Grady, and Stephanie Packard to the Tourism Committee for terms ending September 1, 2025.
Now, I need a second for that motion.
I'll second.
Commissioner Graven. And any comments on this? Anybody?
Just 5 great individuals. Angelia, I'll turn it over to you for a minute. Just 5 great individuals who have served, several of them, 20 years or more. And so definitely appreciate their service and their input that they give to the Tourism Advisory Board. Angelia, any other comments?
Just a variety of backgrounds, but not everybody's involved in like the kind of things that we support in grants. They have a variety of backgrounds they bring to the table.
Very true. Yeah.
Okay. Roll call?
Commissioner Cox.
Yes.
Commissioner Graven.
Yes.
Commissioner Phipps.
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen.
Yes.
Mayor Hall.
Yes. Now, we've got three motions in a row here, the last 3 of the night, that relate to the use of ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan Act. I'm not sure exactly where we're going to end up tonight on these 3, but I'd like to start some general discussion even before I make a motion about these funds, if I can, because I think they're all going to impact each other. And I would like to start with making a couple of comments myself. We're talking about $1.5 million on $500,000 on each fund. And they're all good projects. The drainage project is something that I think the council, I think I can speak for the council, everybody's in favor of the drainage project. I think as an economic event, they're in favor of the sports complex, particularly if this money is earmarked for infrastructure or those kind of things. And then the last one, housing. We had a comment made a little earlier about housing. I think everybody in the community understands, and it's one of the top things that not only the council decided to try to get accomplished in the next 4 years, but it was supported by the staff and citizens that came in to a meeting, and we came up with a list of items that and prioritized them. Housing was not the most important one, but it was the second one on the list. First one was economic development, and then actually even bringing visitors to the community to see what we've got to offer was one of the top ones. All of these things are good projects. It seems like to me, and I'm in favor, I can tell you, I'm in favor of all of them, but here's my dilemma. I'll let everybody else comment before we even make motions maybe, because it may save us some time. I think some of the motions are too early, and I'll use housing as an example. I'm definitely a supporter of improving housing, but we really don't have a plan yet and commitments from developers, contractors. They all want to do it, but I think what we need to do is go to them and say, look, if we if the city of Mattoon contributed $500,000 to a project like that, would you then be willing to develop a new residential development for our city? I think we may be a little bit ahead of ourselves on that project. Now, this is just my opinion right now. And I think it needs to be, as all of these projects need to be tied to some event that needs to be done. And that event for housing would be, all right, pick a site, who's behind it, what developers really want to do something if they get 500,000, and then move forward from that. I would say that we actually have a little bit of a similar project with the sports complex. The sports complex clearly is a project of economic development. It's a very large project. It's $66 million. It's got a lot of funding plans in place. They're not all done yet. We're on our way to raising $10 million in donations, and we're going to get there. But we have other things like bonds and the exact price of the project that we don't know the answer to those yet. So I'm not convinced that we're at the right point to ask for the money just yet. But I also think that's true of the drainage project. And we clearly did not think, even phase one, which is what, $1.25 million, just to get us from the drainage ditch to the south side of Route 16, and doesn't even include a swale in that would help some. We can't do anything with $500,000 on that project. Nobody's going to bid on something if we don't have the money to pay for it. And right now we don't. Not in phase one. So the only thing I'm suggesting on that one is that, again, I'm behind this project, but if we had a chance to apply for grants and see if the price, help me, Dean, on this one, the price of the piping is tripled in cost.
So a little over double.
Okay. All right.
A year ago, it's $500,000 just to buy the pipe.
Yeah.
Not even paying someone.
Yeah, no labor, nothing. So, and I don't know if the pipe price is going to go down. I hope it does, but I would like to apply for some grants and see if the price of pipe will come down. I know we're see somebody shaking heads, but the truth of the matter is, if we approve this tonight, there's nothing we can do. We can't do anything. So, I would almost say, should we postpone all of these until we get more things in place? Wow, yes, I'm interested.
I tend to agree with you on motions, the first two motions. And if we're not there, I'm not sure how we can even vote on those two. I tend to take the opposite viewpoint on the last one, the drainage district. There is stuff we can do. $500,000 will go a long way, and we're ready to move on it now.
What is that? What would that?
And that talks about easement negotiations, the swell we can start on right now. That's the surface side. We're not going to do that. We understand from talking to you a couple weeks ago, $1.25 million out of this is not going to fly because of the cost of the project. And the intention is when the grant openings happen in the spring, we'll go for the piping on that. But $500,000 will go a long way between now and then for the easements, for the surface, for the architectural adjustments we're going to have to make now because of the pricing. That's just on phase one. And I know Dean has some exhibits to show what we've been working on for 16 months as far as phase one, phase two, and phase three to help the west side. So I agree. There's some moving components. But on my motion, we're ready to move, and that $500,000 can be spent.
So
can it be spent tomorrow?
Yeah.
No, but it will be spent in the next 3 to 4 months.
Yeah, but the drawings and all that kind of stuff doesn't do anything to help the person with drainage right now. Yes.
I've lived there for about 17 years. There have been lots of work over the years. And I've definitely seen the city come out and help clean out the culverts. A lot of the water goes into one area. So you've got multiple fields coming into Westview Drive and in between houses and Circle Drive. I'm not saying that any of this money has to come from there. I think some of the ground of the field by 43rd Street, west of Circle Drive and Westview Drive has been possibly one to be donated over the years, or they would work with us or work with you guys, not really work with us. But if there's some kind of retention pond, because most of that water comes in Circle Drive and Westview Drive, if you can keep it coming from that field or I can't think of the other subdivisions kind of by the school, but all the flood water comes through Circle Drive and heads that way and goes to Western Avenue across. So we can keep some of that water from coming into Westview Drive, Circle Drive. That would help. That would help a lot. And I have plenty of pictures so I can show what I've seen through the neighborhoods. Well over the 17 years. So,
yeah. Thank you.
The other part of this is that I kind of like the idea of working on this now because there is some farmland that is just wet all the time. And they've approached the city about subdivision development and trying to incorporate some housing out there. The property the gentleman just talked about, they've approached the city about possibly subdivision development. So it all kind of ties together. This project's ready to move. Can we do the piping? We're going to, we want to take your lead on that and push that, possibly, hopefully the piping prices will come down. But there's action steps we can take right now with that.
Can I make a comment then?
Absolutely.
Right now, this is actually two parts in phase one. One is underground, 60-inch line. It's basically a sealed line. What you've got now is just junk. I mean, it's 110 years old, it's shot. I know of several places going to break through right now. It could break through just because of weight of equipment going over it. I've seen it myself. The other thing is a surface drainage. First Mid-Illinois Bank and Trust controls the farm behind me. For years, they could have spent the money and fixed it themselves. This could be a system for them to get financially a little ahead on this game. All the water doesn't come from just the north. In fact, I talked 45 minutes with David Phipps the other day. A good part of this water, and probably if it's really wet, most of it comes from the west. Around behind me, goes out through that field and floods everything. This is not going to get any better. If you did phase one.
What is phase one?
Phase one was from the ditch, 3,100 feet to Route 16.
That's not including the swale, though. That does not.
What is this swale? I have yet to see it. I don't know where you're talking about.
That's the surface through the
Okay,
first.
so that's a waterway.
That's the waterway.
I'm not sure what you call it. Okay, in farming terms, that waterway, does anybody know what the value of that is? Do you have any ideas? Has anything been, I'm sorry?
200,000.
That's a whole lot less than $500,000. To me, that, if you had that much done, I've already paid out personally $2,000. I'm set down to probably spend another $2,500 on my own property to just get this straightened out. What you're doing up in front, and I've talked to Dean about this, what you're doing up in front by Route 16, if you don't get that water into that 60-inch line from somewhere up in that area, that 60-inch line for a long time was probably just going to sit there about 1/2 or 1/4 full. That's it. That's all it's going to take. You've got to get it into it. And so basically my wife told me, as I told the police chief, don't get in jail tonight. But the whole point I'm making is you got to look at these other points. If you could do some of this with what you have, yeah, we are ready. We, being collectively the city, I've studied this thing myself, probably more than most anybody else has.
So
I know we've already spent money from with Upchurch and Associates to draw plans. I have copies of the original. I have copies of the swale, as you call it, the second one, as it's been redrawn. As it's drawn, it's fine. I have one problem with one part of it, but that's all of it, as far as I'm concerned. But until we put in the whole entire line, the 60-inch line, my part, as I see it, probably isn't going to make any difference anyway. Either we continue the way it is, which I've thought for 10, 15 years now, I've been here, right here, for 5 years, trying to get something done. And as I understand it, we haven't really brought this up. I think we brought it up an awful lot. So my point is, yeah, pass the $500,000 just to get started. Because if you never get started, you guys just going to sit here. This will not happen. It just will not happen. It's going to sit right here and nothing happen. Thank you.
Any, oh, I'm sorry.
Thing. So not only does the field from 43rd drain into Turtle Drive, Westview Drive, the Catholic Charities, Just Right, and Bimbo Bakeries all come into the railroad ditch on both sides. So the whole area is taking it and it tries to flow through western. And that's where all the backup comes.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to confuse this issue here, but the property that you've talked about has never, in this first phase, never been suggested at all. There's no way. Where he's at on 43rd Street, on the $1.25 million project plus the swale, that is not going to be impacted whatsoever.
No.
That area over there.
We're not reaching all the way.
Right.
A lot of the water backup is caused by the fact that the tile is completely broken down south of Route.
South of Route 16, yes.
And so, there are areas of water cause water can't.
Right.
And what we're proposing to replace pipe-wise is the worst section of pipe. We fracked the pipe across the field this winter, survey it, find the holes for the field. The strongest move forward is the pipe itself, not the waterway. Waterway is important. Pipe health. Oh gosh darn. Great. Pipe is critical to
So the piping is critical to the success of this project. What we're talking about now is not doing anything with
surface water.
With the piping. So in your engineering expertise, is this a good plan moving forward?
If I could have one or the other, if I could only have one or the other. Will waterway help? Yeah, everything. Pipe is the critical moment that we're going to change.
Is this putting a Band-Aid on the project for the time being, or?
No, I would not describe it that way. You want to bring up the picture? So the first exhibit that you have here is a picture of phase. The red line is pipe, runs from Route 16 to the, there's an existing 30 tile there that's broken down now, 3,200 feet. That's the $1.25 million project that he goes about, put a 60-inch pipe. Again, I told the same story at a lot of meetings, but this project was first designed, I have a set of plans, by Virgil Dodson in 1966, when he proposed 66 pipe there. And that project never got done because it was too expensive. So when we started this project, I said, we are going to have it. And the answer is no, not. Second thing, in terms of the overwhelming cost, yes. The blue line is the waterway. You can see the stains in the field. That's where the water wants to go to drain to the ditch. That is a supplement to what the pipe is supposed to carry, if I categorize that as anything. Next slide. And then phase 2 would be extending up to Western Avenue, which is the intersection of the railroad and Western Avenue. Every bit of drainage that does exist up there is choked, at that point. Like Henry says, that'll be the moment when we start breaking up enough drainage to fill it. And then one more, to get a direct answer to Rick's question about how far away is it before we held the field behind Circle Drive? It's years and years. One, $1.5 million to work south of Route 16. Another $1 million to get to Western Avenue. And then I haven't even tried to put together cost yet of what it takes to get there. And then, yes, there would be a detention basin in that farm field behind Circle Drive. There's a detention basin now behind the bagel factory, which would be enlarged as part of the overall plan. Very small storm drainage on Western Avenue right now. It's a really long-term project. It's going to take years to accomplish. Okay? And so back to the direct answer to your question, biggest step is that pipe.
Yeah. Which we can't do with 500,000. We could make you cannot put a pipe in for that 500,000.
I understand that.
Okay, we can do this, what I call swale.
The water.
I have my view.
Right.
I think it's how you know, metro.
Right.
I spent half a minute. So this is not cheap. I understand everything else. My point is, it's just to alleviate what's coming from Route 16, that is Orvis, the quick term.
Okay.
The 500 Route 16, that one is essentially a 36-inch round pipe.
Right.
It's oval, but that's what it is. If you go farther down this way, it crosses under through Route 16 and the old railroad. You have essentially 229 or probably supposed to be 30-inch tiles. If you take the square footage of those, there's more water behind Ramses than there's coming from. If you don't do something in this field, it's not ever going to get started. So I'm not even sure we got another capacity plan.
I'm not sure I follow your question.
Okay.
In the final,
Your plans for the small should stand on the waterway and got in there and that's come out to the from the north and west.
Yeah.
That one takes some. I know in that field behind me, the storage man decided he was going to cut in time. Saw that I instead of heavy blade, heavy things. You got a 36-inch thin wall. Probably 4 feet from that was like a 12 or 2. So I get that the wheel combine. You're not running the ground.
Henry, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
If you had a choice to spend $500,000 to make the biggest impact right now, what would you spend it on? Because you can't light it. Right.
I would do one thing.
Okay. And that costs how much? $200,000. So if the amount asked for was $200,000, you could get it done.
No,
Well, let's just assume he's right about this. Okay, thank you.
oh, yeah. Let me point out, the $1 million firm, that's a solid estimate after it's been planned, it's 100% done. 200,000 is not. Okay.
So the
I've got to set a plan to develop.
For the cost of the water, you don't know what it costs. You know bids on it yet or no. Okay. So I'll go back to my original statement. We don't know what it costs to have the biggest impact of that $500,000.
So the 500 will do the job, surely.
Yeah. But if we only need 250.
What are we worried about?
So since we've already committed at the last council meeting, since we committed 42 million of future revenues for the sports complex, perhaps we can take this 500,000 and add it to
Dave,
my 500,000.
Dave, what we've done on the sports complex is not committed anything. It's not even approved yet. Number two, if that sports complex comes through, the city of Mattoon is going to generate an additional $1.3 million a year. You could fund projects like this and the one back here that this guy's talking about.
Okay, but
You're not giving up anything. If the sports complex doesn't happen, you don't get any money.
if the sports complex doesn't happen and the water keeps running this way, we know what happens. It floods.
Again,
They're two separate projects. So I'm not even sure why we're why we're bringing that topic into it, other than we're trying to make a point here. But that doesn't have anything to do with what we're discussing here. They're two separate items. We're talking about a proposal for $500,000 of ARPA funds for the West Side Drainage Project. It didn't have anything to do with what was approved on that separate project.
Okay, I'll give you another suggestion. You want to go through and go vote on these the way they are?
I would like to, go ahead, Dave, but I would like to comment before we go down that path.
I think there was a lady that would like to speak. She was up here. I apologize that you were.
That cannot be.
I was contacted by the Fulton County Health Department, and they asked me through the state of Illinois, EPA, yes, it has been thought about. There is things in the water out there you don't want to know about, and I have pictures of it.
Okay. Yep. Sandy, what were you saying?
First of all, I want to make it clear that all three of these projects are very great projects. I can't blanketly approve this because I feel like that at least two, if not three of them, we're putting the cart before the horse. My question is on the West Side Drainage. Are there grants out there? Are there things? I don't want to leave money on the table. If we can get it funded 80-20, where we only have to come up with $240,000, then we've saved $260,000 for other major projects within the city, whether it's additional West Side Drainage, whether it's roads or whatever. So that's what I don't feel that we're ready to vote on these without doing our homework. On the flip side, this is the first that I have heard the detail of this project. So I don't feel like I'm informed enough to make a vote of yes on these projects without having explanations and information given to me. If this waterway for approximately 200,000, 300, whatever the thing will be, we get a firm number on this, and if this will alleviate some point, then bring it back to the table to let us vote on using these ARPA money for that. How long is it going to take? Another 10 years or 5 years to get him to get a waterway?
No.
That's what I'm asking. I understand that, but what I'm asking is if we've done this much plan, we just need to go one step further and say, okay, if this waterway at this point in time will alleviate some of this pressure, let's focus on that. Get us a true cost on that, see what that's going to cost us, then come back to the table and allocate these funds. We're blindly allocating money that we may or may not need.
So,
Yes. Mrs. Fuller. Dave or
we finished the piping design first, got the cost estimate done, and that's what launched this discussion. The plan views, the design for the waterway is done. We're simple steps away from finalizing cost estimate, completing the set of plans and specifications. It's not years away. We're just having a discussion that happens to be right after something done and ready to bid, and I'm not planning on doing the second. So that's why we're sitting here and all that I was trying to say when I the 200,000 that was in the storm is.
Right, right.
I wasn't saying it's gas.
When do you think you could realistically get what that would cost to do that?
Any day you want that.
Okay.
Okay, that's.
Yes, Mrs. Fuller. Right.
60 days. Virgil Village.
And the health has work. Runoff. Water. COPD. Just and how many people concerning children play at water. And of these children floating down the street like in water. Have other issues.
Right.
These children are and how much is it going to cost when we put it off? That's one point.
Dean, you live in Circle Drive, right? Yeah. Dean, how long will it impact before we impact Circle Drive, based on what you just described up there? Just a ballpark.
Year.
Years. Many years.
Year that we start.
I mean, is this 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? Yeah.
I did 121 during Broad, that number 30 years. The way and stopped it. The drainage in Westview, on the west side. Do something, nothing.
Okay. All right.
Can I talk, Mayor, real quick? I'm going to direct this to Dean Barber. We've heard from Western Avenue Heights, 3000 Prairie, 127 Westview, the Fullers and Circle Drive, now Mr. Protz, others. Will this 250 or 300,000 give some relief if we have any type of heavy rains, say October through December? I understand that, but will the surface runoff alleviate a little bit of what we're hearing now with basement seepage, people that can't drive because the streets are too flooded? Will this give any relief to them? Granted, it's not the complete piping project, but will it slowly or at least partially reduce the complaints that we're hearing?
It will reduce the amount of time the water is standing in. Cul-de-sac that was.
On the south side of Western.
It's waiting for, it's turning drain. The big impact is pipe. Sorry.
Granted.
If you're talking about this, or the piping is the problem. And I can't lie to anyone saying going out and building that waterway is going to have near the impact of building that pipe. Just one. It will still cut the pump. It'll eliminate the water that is there. I'm not against it.
Yeah, neither am I.
Neither am I against it.
Yeah. Where we're sitting right now, from here to go, I want to get going, right? But the waterway is going to drain the area out on out by the highway. And then and then water that pushes up out of the inlet and goes into the waterway will take pressure off the, okay? When you see water standing,
Yeah. Basically, what I'm looking at, and I don't want to step on your toes here, but what I see is a little bit more than most people do, because I am that first two pieces of property right there. What I see is if you can move water away, you've got room for water. What we're looking at, under through that tile, and I have to dig my papers out over there, is something around 3,000 to 4,000 gallons a minute that flow through there. Unless that water can get all the way south, and I grant Dean is saying that the only thing we can do with the money we have available is to do the waterway. Now, here's another thing. You take a look at that waterway and that pipe, they come very, very close together in the future if we follow this. But if we have to wait for that $1.25 million to come around, and we don't do the waterway or in the meantime, then I think you lost an opportunity to at least get started and do something. If you want to look for grants, look for them for the next phase. At least you got money available to do something right now. The
But
thing
all
is,
we've got available right now is the waterway.
Right.
what's that?
I said, all we're always
And that is
asking.
about as important.
And I'm
That's
not
what you're
denying
saying,
that.
I
What
think,
I'm
right?
asking it for is to get a fixed cost of what we think this is going to cost and move
Absolutely, but the
forward.
point I'm going to make,
And that can be done within 30 days,
okay,
60
here's,
days.
if you put it out for bid, you know the price. Why do you need a fixed price right
Well,
now?
we have rules to follow with regards to plans and stuff like that have
So
to be
you're
done.
saying your rule is you have to know what it's going to cost before you go out there and bid it then?
we have to finish the plan, we have.
We always do, Henry.
It's minor.
Hey, I'm not elected this job here. I don't know what's going on there. My point is, I can see water running where it shouldn't be, and I'm going to end up spending the rest of my money to do it. It has no place to go. It's going to accumulate right there at the end of that field. But I've spent, like I said a while ago, 2,500. I'll probably spend that much more out of my pocket. I don't care. The point is, we're going to get something done, one way or another. And here's the thing. You're voting here, and we had this discussion too. The district that we're talking about actually covers a much bigger area than what we're talking about here. It goes all the way to DeWitt, to 21st Street, all the way south to Magnet. It goes 43rd Street south. It actually crosses over to the Fish Hatchery Road, and there's a space over there on the Schaefer Farm where it also comes this way. You're looking at 800 to 900 acres. A lot of that's farmland. None of this is going to get stopped with that. There are other ways if you want to try it, but this seems right now with what we've got is where was the best way to go with the drainage ditch.
Other comments?
Somebody else can.
No. Yes.
My name's Sean Nicholson, pardon me, and I live out on West Moultrie, and I'm 75 years old, and I'm gonna tell you right now, Henry will agree, Jerry will agree, Sterling will see, obviously where you live, Westview, West Moultrie, 34th Street, where that new Habitat home is built. Nice home, but I've seen water standing there many a time where I live in Moultrie. Every time it rains 1 inch, that's not a lot, it floods up to 3 feet deep. And if you know where that daycare center is at 29th and Moultrie, it's inaccessible or inaccessible. Okay? And the city does what they can do, the street workers, but obviously the problem, as Henry just said, the drainage issue goes from way out past Henry's house up to DeWitt, up to DeWitt. And there's an issue the whole way. As Henry's saying, if you don't do something, then nothing's ever going to get done. Okay, so we got 500,000 that you're never going to see again because they gave it to you this year. You got another 500,000 because they gave it to you. You're never going to see it again because they gave it to you out at ARPA plan. Got another 500,000. Why don't you do something that really needs to be done? Looks to me like the whole west end of town needs work and get that fixed. And don't worry about a sports complex that may or may not be pie in the sky. It may be great, I'm not saying that. But this water issue is as old as you are, as old as I am, and nothing gets done. And the longer we talk, you got some money sitting there, you got $1 million, you might have $1.5 million, depending on what you decide to do with this money. I heard that 1.25 million, the last time I checked, 1.5 million is bigger than 1.25. And I'd like to see something done out there, because that water, as I said, you get water in your basement, I don't care what you try to do. You can spend all the money you want to improving your basement. It rains, what happens? You get water. So let's do something instead of talking about it. You got the money, do something.
Okay, a new person.
Live across the street at 1812 Richmond. And I just wanted to get some clarity. Mr. Dean, could you get the plan and the estimate like Ms. Sandra has requested, so that at the next meeting, they can see what the plans are, that we are trying to make progress, and then you guys can vote on it, because I believe that's what the mayor was saying. So, I mean, it sounds like you guys are really trying to do it, but it's just, they're spinning the wheel and saying the same thing. Oh, plans, right? To make
Yeah, finishing the plans is not fun.
and it could be done by the next meeting.
No, it can't be done in the next meeting, but it can be done in the next.
And the next meeting, okay. All right.
Just a very, very quick question, I know. Is there a deadline on this fair funding? What would happen to it if you guys, how long can you table this before you spend it?
Almost 2 years before we make a
It
decision.
has to be appropriated by the end of 2024 and spent by the end of 2026.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so
And by no means are we asking to postpone this for 2 years. All I'm asking is that we get, if the waterway is the way we're going, as Commissioner Phipps indicated, that would at least get the ball rolling. Let's get that phase done, come back with the dollar amount that we can appropriate, rather than just blindly appropriating something that may or may not be of value. And if there is potentially, I don't know if on the waterway side of it would be any grant money out there, but at least we can get that ball rolling to the point where we would potentially have some extra cash to do street repairs, additional drainage issues within city of Mattoon as well. I have drainage issue where I live. I never had water underneath my house until they built Van Lanningham, so.
Yeah. You know who caused that? No. No, God did that. Yeah. And when God created it, people built houses around it. And they knew the people that are having flooding problems now probably had them ever since they've lived there. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So they, in addition, haven't spent any money since 1912. Now, I understand that I talked to one of the members of the board for the district, the water district, Little Wabash Drainage District. There's $150,000 with them sitting on the table for tile. It doesn't say anything about a waterway. It just says for tile. So that's out there also that we haven't even discussed. Now, maybe I know a few more things than a lot of people know. It's out there.
That's the drainage.
The 50,000?
Yes.
Tile and piping are kind of the same.
Yes.
So it's got to go for tile.
It's got to go for pipe.
Okay.
Over by head on.
Anything else? Everybody ready to move on forward on something? I got to ask Dave a question. This is your motion. Are you prepared to ask for an extension of time to get the estimate on the waterway so we can vote on it or whatever it costs?
On item 12?
On item 12. Are you prepared to do that? At least we get the waterway going. Because I think, unless I'm wrong here, if we knew what the cost of the waterway is, and this is, I'm just going to use a number, it was around 250,000, we would all agree to do that. Right? Sandy, what do you think? We could get that done. And you get something done. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to get more money. You know, people say they want to get something done. Well, we can get this done. Yeah. Right.
Exactly.
No.
And that's where I'm
we
saying.
agree.
Get the waterway going. That's the only thing we can afford right now is the waterway. So move on with that. Forge ahead with that.
I have a question on that. If we vote to approve the 500,000 for the waterway.
Right.
And it comes in at 250, can we take the remaining 250 and basically set it back towards the remaining cost of the project?
Why don't we just wait? What's the point? I mean, just,
Because I think what you're hearing.
No, they want to get something done.
30 days is what it's going to take Dean to get this done. So once he gets it done, yeah, I mean, and then we've got to
get something done.
So that would be the direction to have, you guys would need to direct Dean to finish up the plans for the waterway.
Mrs. Fuller. Yeah, and it can go down.
Yeah.
Gas prices went down. So let's get something done then. The waterway. That's the only thing we can get for the money we got right now. Dave, are you going to amend this or not?
I can amend it to say up to 500,000
For the waterway.
for the waterway.
Okay, so whatever the waterway
For the
comes
west
in.
side drainage project.
No. Whatever the waterway comes in, up to $500,000.
That's the target.
Okay, you okay with that? Whatever the waterway comes in?
I see no reason to even make this motion until we get,
Well, yeah, we're going to withdraw this motion. What we're saying is we got to get, well, no, you're saying that.
All I'm saying is I would be willing to amend this motion that says authorizing the allocation of up to 500,000 for ARPA for the waterway for the west side drainage project.
Doesn't that give what you want though, really?
And
We're
then
not
we,
gonna
then,
spend-
and then,
why
and then we can report back on the cost estimate and we can at least start bidding it, negotiate. Sorry.
Negotiating, right, Kevin Bond.
Correct.
Steps.
Correct.
Permanent.
I personally would like to get more of an idea of what it's going to cost before I approve anything. There is no estimate at this point. We have no estimate for this particular job.
I know the rules,
And that's what he's going to do.
This could be done this year.
We don't have an option here, as Dean explained, within 30 days. He has to finish those plans. That's the way the law works. So it doesn't matter whether we approve this tonight or whether we approve it in 30 days. Dean has to get his stuff done.
We're not gonna have any problem. So again, we're having a debate about one project got designed, it's ready to go. Next project is not. And it's not far off. We'll fix the same. But just because one project got done first, the next one won't. Is get done second, doesn't need to be this much stress. That's not what is causing the flooding, that's not what's breaking the moment, okay? Okay? Project that got designed first, you don't have the money. We are going to make for pipe pricing to come down and to look for grant money. And we will finish the design and the negotiation.
And this is not going to extend the relief anywhere north of West Park Plaza, if we would proceed with that, correct? You said that earlier.
It reduces the amount of time water is leaking.
Mm-hmm.
It will not reduce the fact that it's staying.
Okay. Dave, I'm gonna go back to you one more time here. If you're prepared to make the adjustment in the motion up to 500,000,
Sure.
waterway, just the waterway.
Sure.
Up to 500,000.
Sure.
Okay, you prepared to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. We're just gonna hold on that. Susan tells me you have to take these things in order.
Well, you should unless you want to make a motion to move them around.
Well, I want to get this one done.
So I make a motion to approve council decision and request 2022-2296, authorizing the allocation of up to $500,000 of the American Rescue Plan Act funds for the,
I don't care.
and it's adjusted to the waterway surface project.
Okay. And it's for the waterway only, and it's up to $500,000. Is that correct? Okay, is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Oh, let's go with Commissioner Cox.
Yes.
Commissioner Graven.
No.
Commissioner Phipps.
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen.
Yes.
Mayor Hall.
Yes.
So I indicated before, I am not against this project. I think it's great. I would just like to know, have more information before I can make an educated regrets.
We haven't discussed this for months.
Not this specific detail, Mr. Uncrown.
Hey, I want to move on to the next motion. We got more business.
If I may, I would like to make the point, and this is by far one of the most important projects facing the city, if not the most important. I totally agree. We have an issue over on the west side of town. I think everybody in this room would expect us as council to do our due diligence before we start throwing $500,000 figures around without a solid plan as to what that money is going to be used for. Because we did not have all the facts on what we just voted on before tonight. This discussion should, with where we are on this project, we should have had more discussion on this. Now, Mr. Nicholson made a point earlier that you advocated for more ARPA funds to be used on this one project. I think that's perfectly legitimate. Let's make the most impact on those ARPA funds that we possibly can. I don't disagree. The fact is that we have not had that discussion. That's where I struggle here with this conversation, because I don't make $500,000 decisions lightly. And I don't expect anyone here would want me to. Now, I do support the project, and I'll be interested to see what those figures come back at, and we can get the project started. But I'd like to have and expect more conversation prior to those things occurring in the future. So, thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Okay, I am going,
Public Works, we do all of our public presentations, public understood it before. There's never time in a council meeting having a project by project. And we have had public meetings on the West Side project. It's a work in progress.
okay,
Yeah, okay.
let's go.
Fair enough.
You've been connected with the conversation. Agreed. I don't want this to come across to anyone that we just started thinking about this. Been working on this. I've been updating every month about where we are. And if you would, it's just not a good function of the van. Public Works Advisory Board, we can talk a whole hour about work. Than there is to come into a city council meeting, talk for an hour.
Okay, on motion number 11, I'm going to withdraw my motion about residential housing for the very same reason we said we weren't ready to go really on the other projects. And I still believe we've got to do something about residential housing, affordable housing. And I want to postpone it until we have a site, talk to some contractors and investors to do that. So I'd like to, I reserve the right, and I can do this as mayor, by the way, because I can put it on the agenda. But that doesn't mean you have to vote for it. But anyway, I want to postpone that one. I don't think we need to make that decision tonight. On the other hand, on number 10, I want to modify this motion, and I want to tell you how what I'm trying to do here. The $500,000 that we are going to put in the sports complex, we're dependent on a couple of things. Number one, if the sports complex doesn't go forward, this is removed. There is no money spent, which is true about the sports complex in total. We have to have certain things in place. We have to have funding. You know, we got to get the bonds sold. We got to have accurate estimates of what the project is going to cost. But assuming all those things are in place, I still want, by the way, to make this motion to approve this, again, subject to all the other approvals we've got to go through, and that this money is only spent on infrastructure, which is roads, sidewalks, and those kind of things, which we need out there anyway to develop that area, whether the sports complex goes or not. But again, it won't be spent until these other things are done. So my motion becomes authorizing the allocation of $500,000 of American Rescue Plan funds for the sports complex for the use in infrastructure such as roads, sidewalks, and those things. Could be sewer and water. And also subject to the fact that if these other things like funding, the bidding process comes into, what it's supposed to be, that can stop it too. So those things also have to be done. Okay, so that's my motion. Is that understood? Okay.
So
What do you
Mayor,
like? Yes,
real
go ahead.
quick, 500,000 will not touch a $4 million. It's projected $4 million infrastructure for the sports complex. So basically that 500,000 is going to be a grant match.
Right. Well, it won't be a match.
Well, we're not going to spend 200,000 to build sidewalks.
No.
We're going to find a $4 million or $5 million grant, and that will be the city match is what we're
Right.
voting on.
Right.
I'm clarifying on that.
Okay. Right.
There's not supposed to be any costs whatsoever. So that's,
The-
or
That's not true, Tony.
well, it's circle here to be built.
Right. Right, you're right.
So you're probably.
By year 3, we're expected to generate money.
Never really pointed that.
Well, all the forecast numbers that were on all that sheet, what's available to everybody, will indicate, as they do still today, that money would not start coming into the city until everything's a forecast. Yeah. Well, maybe. The environmentalists don't tell you that. So so I've got a motion on the table. Is anybody going to second it?
Yes.
Yes. You want me to do it? You got it? Tell me what you got. I'll tell you if it's right.
You move to approve council decision request 2022-2294, authorizing the allocation of $500,000 of American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funds to the sports complex project for the use of infrastructure such as roads, sidewalks, and maybe sewers, subject to the fact that the other funding comes through.
Grant funding.
It's subject to it's really.
Subject to a grant.
Yeah. The grant's got to come through. It's matching funds for the grant. So subject to the grant coming through.
Subject
Yeah.
Subject to
Don't scratch
the
everything.
grant coming through.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
So Mayor, does this have a timeline on it, on how long?
Well, we know we
Bid
have,
this?
we know we have to make a decision within, I think we can put a timeline on it for 1 year.
I'd like to have that timeline on there, and I'll tell you why, because if we don't,
Right.
that is money. We have a whole list of projects.
Right. Let's not-
Whether they're library windows,
When Henry
stuff
comes
at
for some more
wastewater
money a year
treatment
from now.
plant. We have,
No, I'm just,
I think that motion needs to have a 1-year time
That's
frame.
okay.
And if
Okay.
not, then that 500,000 goes back into other projects that we have.
That's fine.
So you're talking about a year, the thing's not even supposed to start till March, April of '23 to be built.
Yes, that's true.
So, they're hoping to have the indoor by October of '23 and the outdoor by October or spring or fall of '24.
The only thing that we
So you're
need,
cutting your nose off to spite your face.
no, not really, because
By
we will know what bondings are, we'll know what the price is, we'll have firm bids.
There again, I go back to the fact that why allocate it now? Why don't we wait till see what grant money we get for the infrastructure?
Because it will help us in getting the project approved. When the bond companies come along and see what we've got pledged, then they're going to say, yeah, you've got the money to go forward. So it does have an impact.
So will a year give you enough time?
I would say I'm fine with that.
I think so.
I'm fine with it, based on what I know.
We're not having success, Sandy, writing grants. So 1 year is plenty of time.
Well, we're not writing these particular grants. I believe these are coming from,
From where?
Well, we'd be writing grants for this as well.
for the infrastructure part of it. That's our side,
It's strictly infrastructure.
Part of it, yeah.
complex people that were hired,
Yes.
or that are being hired.
Two different,
That's fine.
multiple sources.
If the timeline passes, we can figure out what we're going to do with it.
I tend to agree with Sandy that we need to get the grants done first, or at least applied along with this. And perhaps we fill out the grant application along with a CDR at that point to get it approved.
So do we have a second?
I'll second that, Mayor.
And any other comments? Okay.
And the reason being is because this is an economic development project, which is going to help in the future.
I hope
This is an
do
investment.
some of these long-term
I
projects.
mean, if we don't do some of these economic development projects, then we're going to continue to spin our wheels. That's been my take on that project from day one. So
We're clearly not generating any more funds for the city to use by not doing anything to develop the economic area. It just doesn't happen. You can put in factories, you can put in sports complexes. They both generate money for the community. If we don't do them, then forget about ever getting this long-term project done unless it's all done with grants. So
that's,
So just to be sure, the time frame is September 6th, 2023, 1 year from tonight. And then we don't have it,
You say
then we've
1
got
year?
other projects.
Right.
That money's released to those projects.
we get to vote on what to use it. All right, roll call.
I remember where we left off at. Commissioner Clausen.
Yes.
Mr. Cox.
yes.
Mr. Graven.
No,
Commissioner Phipps.
No.
Mayor Hall.
Yes. All right. Next on the agenda, department head reports. City Administrator Kyle Gill.
Been working on amendments to the comprehensive plan, a couple annexations of small parcels of land out there by I-57 and around the sports complex. A couple of different special uses, one coming up on the 13th next week on cannabis, special use for cannabis dispensary in the former Long John Silver's. It's going in front of Planning Commission next Tuesday night. And then a solar, which will be coming later this month in front of the Planning Commission, solar farm that's up on North 33rd, which we have granted the special use before, but it expires after 2 years if it's not started. And so it has expired and they're wanting to reapply. Yeah. And just working on some union negotiations, arbitration coming up. So I'll open it up for questions if you guys have any questions for me.
Any questions for Kyle? Okay, City Attorney Dan Jones.
Not much on my end. It's business as usual. Happy to answer questions about anything that's going on.
Okay. Any questions? City Clerk Susan O'Brien.
I'm busy with day-to-day operations and distributed the RFP for the broker of record for our health insurance last week. That's it.
Okay, perfect. Finance, Beth Wright.
So just report that the 2022 Treasurer's Report has been published. It was published in the Journal Gazette last Tuesday. So we should get our final installment of property tax with no problems. Revenue tracking, video gaming tax, that number was available today. It seems to be rebounding a bit. Overall, we're ahead of where we were a year ago by about $325,000. Utility tax, that number was updated today. Unrestricted cash in the general fund, today, $8.865 million. Whereas 3 weeks ago, it was 9.4. But it ebbs and flows with the shared revenue from the state. That's all I have.
Okay, any questions for Beth? And next on the list is Public Works Dean Barber.
Did a good job. So,
Okay, questions for Dean? Fire Chief Jeff Hilgoss.
Thank you, Mayor. Since our last meeting, you guys have answered 143 calls for service. Our inspectors have done 6 inspections and follow-ups. One of those was the lift school building, the old consolidated, that now has kiddos in it as of last Friday, I believe it was. So it's pretty exciting for the school district in our area. That's a very nice facility. They've done their weekly trainings, ARF training, EMS training. They've been out doing hydrants and walkthroughs of commercial refrigeration and county mark. And I've been just doing day-to-day operational stuff. That's all I got, Mr. Mayor.
Any questions for Jeff? And next is Sam Gaines.
Since we last met 3 weeks ago, 1,924 calls for service, 64 arrests. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
That's enough.
Any questions? Sam? Yeah.
What will be the rate? Or complex would 300, 400 more every time we come in?
Calls for service?
Service, like rent, 250,000.
Based on my conversations with other chiefs where there are sports complexes, very little, minimal police contact with people.
So you would say,
No. Not based on, like I said, without knowing, without it being here, I don't know, but based on my conversation with chiefs in other areas that have these sports complexes, might have the occasional argument between a parent and an umpire or something, but that's it. There's not a whole lot of calls for youth sports complexes like this.
Is it going to be secure?
That's up to them. I mean, I don't know.
They usually pay their own security.
Usually?
Yeah. Any other questions for Jeff or Sam? Arts and Tourism, Angelia Burgett.
I'm working on developing plans for 2023 for arts and for tourism. Working on the September 23rd, Matthew High School bringing students to our building. And we're going to be working with them on their service day, which we've not done previously. So hopefully that's going to be a good partnership, good beginning. And Fall Folly just began practice at the depot for the elections in October.
Okay. Any questions for Angelia? Okay. Let's see here. Oh, comments by the council. We can start with Jim.
Just want to thank everybody for your input. Sitting through a 2-hour meeting, so I just recommend that Ed Dowd take all of you out for ice cream. So it's all on you, Ed. No, I have no other comments, Mayor.
Thank you. Dave Cox.
No other comments other than, again, I agree. Thank you all for coming. It is an important issue. I know it's frustrating that it goes on much longer than anybody thinks it should or we would like as well, but it is an important project, an important issue, and appreciate y'all being here. So it is important to me as well as I'm sure I speak for everyone up here, but appreciate your presence and the comments tonight.
And David Phipps, or no, Sandy, I'm sorry, Sandy Graven. I'm doing.
Thank everyone for coming, and trust me, I want the project for you. I just want it, I want to know what it's going to cost and what it is. Nobody buys anything without knowing what it's going to cost. So hopefully we'll come back and Dean will have good news for us and we can get going. But thanks everyone for coming.
And now David Phipps.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you for those that are speaking. Great projects. I also want to thank the council for your feedback tonight too, and I feel like it's a pretty good discussion. And I found that to be valuable as well. So that's all I had.
I'd like to particularly thank Henry. Number one, he didn't get arrested. Okay. So,
Yeah, he's not outside the
I
building.
did see Sam reach for his gun a couple times. But Henry did not get arrested. But more importantly, Henry's done a good job, and we all know that, in trying to get a lot of things done. And it's not always easy. We all have to work with limited resources and limited dollars. We try to make the best decisions that we can. They're not always exactly right. I've known these guys have made some mistakes. But seriously, Henry, thank you. Yeah. And now we've got a lot more work to do tonight. I will say that we're going to go in, we're going to recess to closed session. Let me read this first, and I'll tell you what's going to go on. We're going to recess to closed session pursuant to the Illinois Open Meetings Act for the purpose of discussion of the appointment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the city or legal counsel for the city under 5 ILCS 122C1 and collective negotiating matters between the city of Mattoon and its employees or their representatives or deliberation concerning salaries for one or more classes of employees under 5 ILCS 122C2. And on that, we're not going to take any action after we get out of there. We could be in there for a while. So you can all stay until we get back to adjourn. Henry will stay with you and talk.
Or Ed can take him out for ice cream.
And if Henry doesn't talk, Ed will. So we're, now we got
Seconds.
we need a second to
I'll
go.
second, Mayor.
Commissioner Cox and
Commissioner Cox?
Yes.
Mr. Graven?
Yes.
Mr. Phipps?
Yes.
Mr. Clausen?
Yes.
Mayor Hall?
yes. Thank you. We'll be
This time I will pause the recording till we get back from executive session. Okay, we're back.
I think you signed it.
Yep. Are we at? reconvene.
Yep, we're reconvened.
Need a motion from somebody.
Mayor?
Yes,
I make a motion we adjourn.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay. You're going to second, but you're not going to vote yes?
Commissioner Phipps.
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen.
Yes.
Mr. Cox.
Yes.
Commissioner Graven.
No.
Mayor
I was going to say yes, but
Yes.
say that's my comment.
That concludes the meeting.